What's the first thing that comes to mind when I say crackhead? What about junkie or even dope fiend? Is it a lawyer? Is it a nurse? Is it a flight attendant? Because that's what it is for me. These are the people that I interact with every time I go to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. Some of us had these careers when we got clean. Some of us got these careers because we're clean. But ultimately, through rehabilitation, we were offered an alternative to jails and institutions, and because of that, we get to live. You may not feel that addiction is relevant to you, but it's a worldwide problem, and it affects 1 in 4 Americans, if not personally, then through family. There's sex addiction, gambling addiction, shopping addiction. When you go into a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, we read out of what we call the basic text. And one of the first lines that really stuck out to me was, our reaction to drugs is what makes us addicts, not how much we use. Why is it that drug addiction is treated differently than other addictions? It's social stigma, and that's what I want to change. ACLU's website right now is citing a book called The New Jim Crow. Over half of the nonviolent arrests in America today are for possession of marijuana. That means 500,000 people are in jail today because of possession of marijuana. It is the drug problem of America. And even with the legislative changes that are on the table and up for vote today, I talked to a lawyer and they explained to me that if your charges are worded as possession of a controlled substance, you will fight to get your record cleared. I was 23 when I had my first and only interaction with the judicial system. I was arrested for possession of marijuana, and it's followed me throughout the years. Even though I was only sentenced to community service, the charge was deferred and I took drug classes. I've had to explain that drug charge to employers at job interviews and to licensing for professional licensing. And even now trying to get my apartment, it's on my application. With this, it just puts people in a situation of isolation. It prevents them from getting the help and the professional resources that can keep them in this environment. It further isolates them instead of allowing them to understand their disease and address it differently. There's a book called The Addicted Brain, and they talk about this science experiment where they hooked up the mouse to this electrode stimulator, and there was a lever where the animal could continually push it for that same sensation that we as human gets when we do drugs. And they would not eat. And that animal would sit there and over and over and over push that lever until exhaustion, disregarding all other animalistic needs. MRIs, when you look at them and you see how cocaine and sugar stimulates the brain, it's the exact same. This is something that goes far beyond a moral issue. It's not because people can't or won't. There's a biological explanation for it. The disease of addiction is explained as 2 things. It's obsession and compulsion. The obsession is like a phone app running, right? You pull it up, you use it, but then you don't close it out completely. So it's in the background. So even though it's not the forefront of your focus, it's just a push notification away. The compulsion is harder to explain if you don't live it. But the way I can explain it to you is a pint of ice cream is technically 4 servings. However, for me, I eat a whole pint every time I eat ice cream. And if I were a transformer, I'd be Amazon Prime, because the click add to cart button releases the same dopamine as a drug would, or eating would, or sex does. The issue is that they're all treated differently than the one thing, which is drug use. And that stigma is the separation point there. When we look at it as something that needs to be treated instead of something that needs to be punished, because that's what incarceration is. It's a punishment. Theoretically, it's supposed to be a debt to society payment by the person who caused harm. But how is the consumption or use or even possession of a drug causing harm to society? Yes, the theft or other crimes that happen in pursuit of drugs are crimes and do need to have some kind of punishment. However, the use of drug itself only harms the individual that is using it. So why are they being punished? If you are trying to be on a diet and you can't stick to that diet. Or you're riddled with consumer debt and yet you still go out and purchase something. What if you were sent to jail for that? It's a very similar parallel, but we don't see it that way because of how society has portrayed it. If we can look at addiction as something that needs to be treated, like many other mental health issues, then we can start to address the problem instead of creating more problems. Through incarceration, we isolate people, we keep them from the help that they need. Lawyers are looking at it and seeing that it's a progressive problem. Doctors are looking at it and there's science that backs up what we're talking about. The ACLU is looking at it and how it affects society at large. And we have a 12-step program that has branched off into many diverse forms. And there's other ways that address it as well. There's smart treatment, there's rehabilitation centers. People find it through spirituality, but there's so many other ways that it could be addressed that offers a solution instead of continuously punishing someone for something that they probably don't even know or understand that they are dealing with. I told you about how I got arrested and that I went through that process, and that did not change my course in life. It wasn't until a year and a half later that I went to a rehab facility and was introduced to, first of all, what addiction is, second of all, a 12-step program that I was able to get clean and stay clean and have for 7.5 years. Jail did not work for me. The judicial system did not work for me. Paying a debt to society did not work for me. However, rehabilitation has, and exposure to other options and education and resources have. What if you were punished for things that you want to do better and get better, but you don't have the resources to be able to do so? I'm not asking you to write your congressman or state senator demanding decriminalization of all drugs. What I'm hoping for is that the next time you see the panhandler on the corner of the street, you have a little bit of empathy or compassion for him. Or when you hear about a parent who's losing their child due to drug use, you also understand that the parent needs help just as much as the child. But ultimately with this, my hope and change for the future, with the breaking of the stigma and allowing change, is that if you're ever in a position of hiring and someone comes across your table with a resume, but they have a drug history, that you give them the opportunity to prove to you that change is possible. Thank you for your time.